Hello and welcome to Beta Episode 2 of Channel Anime, the anime review show. I'm John. This week I'll be taking a look at a series that is funny, awkward, uncomfortable, very twisted, but also sweet and kind of heartbreaking at times, and often many of these things in the space of about a minute. Of course, it can be none other than WataMote. Based on a manga by the same name, WataMote, or in English, no matter how I look at it, it's you guys' fault that I'm not popular. I'm not even going to try to say the full Japanese title. Tells the story of 15-year-old Tomoko Kuroki, who, at the beginning of the series, is about to start her first year of high school. She assumes that she's going to be immediately popular, because she's had 50 years of dating experience and has dated over 100 boys in dating simulation games. Of course, it doesn't exactly work out how she plans, and needless to say, she doesn't handle it well. Now, getting into the characters, of course, I have to start off with Tomoko. I love the contrast between her quiet, timid, outer voice. She's really incapable of speaking to anybody outside of her immediate family and best friend. And her loud, fairly angry and often panicky inner monologue. Voice actress Izumi Kita did an amazing job with Tomoko, and in many ways her performance makes the show. The series doesn't work if you don't like and sympathize with Tomoko. You really have to be in her corner. Now, I personally really related to her. That was basically me at that age, and still, in many ways. Even though she did get a bit dark at times. At one point she said she'd trade a year off of her life if it meant that the popular kids could die in an accident. But then I saw her timid exterior again, and it put me right back in her corner. Now getting into the rest of the main characters, and the only three people that Tomoko is capable of talking to, starting with Yu, her best friend. Introduced in episode 2, Yu is basically everything Tomoko isn't. Beautiful, confident, and popular. But there's a very sweet moment in that episode when they start talking about anime, and Tomoko realizes that despite how she's changed on the outside, Yu is the same person she knew back in middle school. And this led to a very nice moment when, after lying to Yu about how great her high school life had been, Tomoko breaks down and admits it's all been hell. It really sets up the relationship between the two going through the series. Next we have Tomoko's parents, who aren't really featured very heavily, but they each have their moments. Tomoko's mother, who, after putting up with her nonsense for most of the series, finally gets sick of it in episodes 8 and 9, and puts her foot down in some very entertaining ways. And her father, while only having one scene in the series, happens to have the best scene in the series. It is one of the funniest gags I have ever witnessed, and I really can't say anything about it other than it involves a boys' love game and a large massager, if you get my meaning. And finally we have Tomoki, Tomoko's little brother. Early on in the series, Tomoko emotionally blackmails her brother into having weekly conversations with her because she hasn't spoken to anyone in months. And it really sets up a great dynamic between the two, because yes, of course, they're siblings, they bicker, they fight, but it shows that they actually really care about each other as well, and it's very sweet at times, and very funny at other times. Now I should mention that she emotionally blackmails him by threatening suicide, which brings me to my next point in the review. This show is, well, the best way I can put it, delightfully transgressive. It crosses lines in a way that not only would you not expect from an animated series, but in a way that I've really never witnessed before. For example, in one scene, Tomoko asks Tomoki if her school uniform perks him up a little down there in order to get him to leave her alone so she can go back to playing video games. In another episode, she calls up Yu and very creepily asks what kind of panties she wears because she's convinced that expensive panties are the key to popularity. She also attempts to get a job at a hostess club and continually accuses Tomoki of leering at her. Now, not all of the transgression is all that fun. In fact, it gets rather sad when some of Tomoko's classmates are very casually talking about being molested on the train, and takes a decidedly creepy turn when Tomoko gets jealous of them, saying, quote-unquote, "It's like girls who have been molested are superior as women." The series also pulls off some very abrupt and surprising tonal shifts. In one of the more delightfully transgressive scenes, Tomoko, who is desperate to find someone to watch fireworks with her, finds a pair of middle school boys on the roof where she used to hang out with Yu, and she makes this really heartfelt plea for them to let her watch the fireworks with them. It's then revealed that the two were actually up on the roof to peep on the sleazy hotel next door, and of course Tomoko joins them, realizing that she just wanted to watch something with someone and ends up having a great time. Now, I'm focusing a lot on the transgressive elements of the show, because that's what makes the strongest impression. But it elicited a lot of other emotions from me as well. Of course, it is ostensibly a comedy, and it is very funny. But there are some really heartbreaking moments, like when Tomoko asks if it's okay to be like this when she realizes she's probably going to be alone for the fireworks. Or when, in reference to Yu's friends from school, she supposes that people normally have those. And the show can also be very sweet at times. Like when Tomoko is taking care of Tomoki while he's sick, albeit somewhat ineptly. Of course, then you find out that she only did it so she could get sick and stay home from school. Now, in addition to all of the transgression and emotion, WataMote is also beautifully meta. There are references to several other anime, including Death Note, Kuroko no Basuke, Akira, and Attack on Titan. There's also a scene in which Tomoko's teacher, while giving a lecture on social satire, points out that it's usually short-lived and only a product of its time. And the best meta-gag I have ever seen. While surfing the net, Tomoko finds ads for a Tomoko figure and WataMote, the series itself. Now I'd like to talk a bit about the music. WataMote has possibly the greatest opening theme song I have ever heard. And not just in anime, period. It seamlessly shifts from death metal to jazz and back again. And the closing theme is very catchy as well. Incidentally, they use a different closing theme in episodes 2, 5, 6, and 11 for some odd reason. There were also some very interesting choices made with the art style of the show. At times when she's feeling particularly invisible, Tomoko literally turns gray, and this leads to her turning invisible in the last episode. And there are also occasional shots of Tomoko drawn in other styles, including Cubism, which I thought was a very interesting choice, and they were also very nicely done. Now on to the character and plot development, and it may seem odd that I'm saving this for last, but there really wasn't any. The show is very episodic, and very self-contained, except for the last few episodes. And so there is no overarching plot, and the plot really goes nowhere. There is, however, a bit of character development on Tomoko's part, and it's very nicely done. There were also a couple of nice scenes in the final episode that mirrored the first episode. One in which Tomoko is finally able to say goodbye to her teacher when she wasn't previously, and another in which the voiceover that began the first episode comes back at the end of the finale. But this time it gets a very different reaction from Tomoko, and I have to admit, it almost made me cry. In summary, this show is a work of art. Emotionally, it runs the gamut, it takes chances and crosses lines that you would never expect, and it is incredibly polarizing. And that being the case, I would say that if it sounded at all interesting, judging from this review, please give it a shot. I'll put a link down in the description to all of the episodes on Crunchyroll. Alright, so that's it for WataMote. Until next week when I'll be talking about my top 5 favorite anime. Take a look down in the aforementioned description and you'll find links to find the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, links to my anime list and Crunchyroll profiles, and a link to Zombie Takeout, the Being Cult movie review podcast that I co-host and produce. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk at you later. Voice actor Izumi Kita. Izumi. Voice actress Izumi Kita did an amazing job with Tomoko, and her voice actor...